This is George Dionne of the Rock is George podcast, and this is a KNAC.com exclusive interview with solo artist Richie Kotzen. If I knew absolutely nothing about Richie Kotzen, how would you describe your music to me?
Oh, I wouldn't bother. I would just hand you a CD and you could listen to it. One of the things that I love about music is that you don't have to do any of that. And I've learned, over the years, I get asked that question, and I don't think there's any artist in the world that likes to answer that. And the reason is because the music is meant to be listened to, not described. It describes itself. Have you heard the record?
I have heard the new record, yes.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of joking a little bit about it, but it's true. I think the minute you try to start to verbalize, you start to project this sort of idea of something, and I think it's really crucial that people are given the fair opportunity to listen to the music and interpret it on their own. I mean, I guess you could categorize it, and I would definitely categorize it as rock. It's not classical music, and it's definitely not flamenco, which I would love to know how to play, but it's outside my wheelhouse.
Well, in that vein that you said that you would hand someone a CD, I'll tell you, I became a Richie Kotzen fan with your last release, 50 for 50. It was just so diverse and such a wide range of styles that, you're right. I couldn't put you into a box.
Well, and I think really, for a recording artist, you have a perspective. Things happen in your life, you write about them, and it comes out in the music. And but you also, you're not, people have been there before you, so you've got, you can't help but have influences. As a young person, you're influenced by your surroundings, by people and by music and movies and all these things that have existed before you were on the planet. And so for me, I think my influences, like any other recording artists, are there in the music. I grew up outside of Philadelphia, so I have the influence of Philly radio, which when I was a kid, there was a lot of soul music being played. Stevie Wonder and George Benson were my first two concerts separately. They were not on the same bill. And then, as I got older, I got into rock and roll. And Iron Maiden was the first hard rock concert. So somewhere in those three artists, that was my very young influence in music. So I guess I have that kind of pendulum swing from, the hard rock genre into the old school sort of, Stevie Wonder style R&B music. And I think that's kind of, where my pendulum swings. I joked earlier about flamenco. I don't go quite that far into that genre. I'm not much of a country western guy. But there you have it. Those are my influences.
Well, let's talk about the latest album. It's called Nomad. It is, I believe, your 23rd album. It comes out on September 27th through BMG. When it comes to writing music, do you have a particular method? I know you're a guitarist, so maybe things start out on the guitar and develop from there.
They don't always, they don't necessarily start on the guitar. The oftentimes it's a melody. I'll hear a melody and and from there, once you have a melody, you need a lyric. Occasionally it's a guitar riff. In the case of the song Cheap Shots, it was a guitar riff, and that spawned into me improvising the melody, and then that led to the song. But the reality is that they're all different. They all come from different places. And so some of the songs, in my history of writing music come in my sleep. There's two songs on the record that came that way. The song Escape literally woke me up. I heard the whole thing, the whole chorus was in my head, the music and the lyric and the melody. So I ran to the living room and pulled out a recorder app on the phone and documented it, because I've learned if I don't do that, the next day when I wake up, I won't remember it. So that's something that I learned long ago. I remember having a song idea, waking up and thinking, ah, I'll do it in the morning. Morning came and the song was gone.
You mentioned Cheap Shots, fantastic single ahead of the album's release. It's got that little hook that draws you in with the little, huh,
Yeah.
I don't do it as good as you. I don't do it as good as you.
Yeah. Ah. Who would have thought that that would have mattered? Yeah, I don't even know why I did that. I was singing, like I said, that song was one of those songs that actually came the way you were imagining it would be written, where the guitar riff was there, and then the rest came together. And that song was written that way, where I had the guitar riff and I was improvising the singing, and then the chorus came, and I just dropped that in there. There was a spot, and I just did it, and I heard it back, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, that sounds like it's part of the song now. I got to do that every time. And so that's how those little things are born, is that they come out of out of improvisation, and then something sticks.
Another song that you have out ahead of the album is On the Table. I was reading that this is sort of tied into a little personal thing, but your
Hmm.
Brazilian father-in-law, his first English words were actually on the table. If you want to expand a
Yeah, I
little.
can elaborate on that. So in Brazil, according to my family, what they've told me is that when they teach English, one of the first phrases that they teach is "the book is on the table." Um, and so I found that amusing when they told me that. And so yeah, and my father-in-law didn't speak English, and he knew a few phrases, and but that was one phrase that he knew, and it sounded funny to me when I'd hear him say it. It just, it stuck with me, and his voice saying, "The book is on the table," why he's saying that, and so then with this song, how it came into the song was, I had the track, I had the music recorded. And I had like the melody, oftentimes like I'll put the microphone up and I'll kind of improvise a melody. And then out of that, I gotta have the words, or the words will come to me first. But in this instance, it was the other way around. And so uh, I heard the thing, la la da 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 da. And then in my mind, I heard the book is on the table. And it sang really well. That's so much about writing songs and lyrics. It's not always about rhyming as if you were in, seventh grade writing your first poem. It's sometimes about how it feels and how it sings and how it sits in the music. And I think a lot of people that aspire to be songwriters get stuck on this. Oh, well, it has to, fire and higher and, desire. It has to rhyme in a certain way. I think, quite frankly, it doesn't. And you could sit and name probably 50 great songs where they don't follow that. But rather than get sidetracked, back to the book is on the table. So it sang well at that point. The book is on the table. And I thought, well, how can I go back and tie this all together like a little puzzle? How can I make this into a song that makes sense? And so I thought about a person. Now, this is outside of my father-in-law, has nothing to do with him. I thought of, someone that kind of masks their behavior, but they don't realize that it's quite obvious what they're doing in their malicious intent. The book is on the table. So that was my idea of how to, no reading between the lines. And I thought, well, that can sing well. No reading between the lines because the book is on the table. Now, and then at that point, I was like, okay, now I got something. I got something that I can, write off. And then what did I say after that? Reality finds you learning lessons from the error of your ways. Which is an expression, the error of your ways. I mean, you've heard people say that a million times. So at that point, I said, okay, all right, now I got a song. Now I can go and, deal with my verses and this and that. So that was exactly how that came together.
So with the albums being titled Nomad and you having a song called Nomad, is it sort of like a parallel or metaphor for the life of a musician? Because it could be considered the same.
Yeah, I think a little bit. I think that's a good observation, because it is that kind of lifestyle. And I didn't know what I was going to call the album. I mean, you uh, mentioned it being my 23rd solo album, so at one point I think I was thinking about calling it a number. You know, but then I was confused on what to consider a solo album and what not, because there's other albums that are like kind of solo albums, but kind of not, and compilations, and it got too confusing. So when I had all the songs ready to go, I was looking at the titles, and I thought, well, Nihilist would be probably too aggressive for a title, although I love the song. And then I saw the Nomad, and then I took the photograph, you know, that became the cover, and I thought, yeah, that seems to work. And I started messing around, typing it, and the font and this and that, and I thought, yeah, I like that. It seems to fit. It makes sense.
The font reminds me of The Godfather a little bit.
Yeah, it's called Macbeth, I think is the name of that font. Yeah.
Sort of that Mario
But
Puzo kind of
I
poster.
like the way I liked the way that looked against the photograph. Like it was kind of had this eerie, that picture has a certain feeling, but then when you put that font against it, it really creates this sort of feeling of there's something lying underneath all this, other than the pretty landscape of the mountain and the blue sky. There's something much darker happening underneath the first couple of layers, and that's why I chose that font, because it kind of made me have it just made me feel a certain way, you know. So I thought it was appropriate.
And that photo was actually taken outside your home.
That's in my yard. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Not a
yeah.
bad backdrop to look at every day.
Oh, yeah, yeah. We have 3.5 acres, and it's all mountains around us, and we're on a little hill, so you can't see the house from the road. Once you're up here, it's really, everywhere you look, you see nature. It's really nice.
Do you play all the instruments on Nomad, or did you bring in some guys to help out?
I do play all the instruments with the exception of drums on a song called These Doors. That's Kyle Hughes, who did my last tour, and Dan Petrush played drums on Nomad, who has done many shows with me and toured with me in South America. And so, you know, uh, basically the way it works is I have these ideas, I hear these things, and I try to figure out how to get the speakers to put it back to me. And so, if I find myself in a position where I'm hearing something that I don't quite have the facility to play, then I'll call a friend. And so, on those two songs, I called a couple of friends to help me. But in general, typically I'm the only guy, I'm the only musician on the recording.
Was it tough to narrow down the song selection? I mean, you went from an album in 2020 that had 50 songs on it, and on this one, I think you have eight. So was it tough to kind of narrow it down so it could be a single album release?
No, I just like the first 8 songs that I like. That's the album. Yeah. So I wasn't pulling from a large pool. It was like, um, I had 7 songs, and then the eighth one was written, and then I was done. But the attitude all the way down the line was I wanted to make a record along the lines of the old records that I grew up listening to and that were on vinyl, where you had side one and side two, or side A and side B. And typically it was 4 or 5. Oftentimes it was 4 songs on a side, and I started looking at albums just to make sure that that was okay to have, 8 songs on an album. And then I found about 15 classic albums from my childhood that were all 8 song albums. And I had that idea, so, okay, it is okay to do this. And I liked the idea that the last record that I did was a 20 song, 50 song album. And I was thinking of the year it came out. And then now, okay, let's see if I can do something that's definitive, artistically defines me without so many songs. And I feel like this accomplishes that.
And Nomad comes out on the BMG label. I feel like this is a big deal for you because I feel like you've been a bit of a nomad when it comes to record labels.
You're right. I mean, and I've had major label deals. I was signed to Interscope, I was signed to Geffen, had records come out on Capitol and Sony and uh, Atlantic. So, I've had plenty of deals, and for years now. I've been doing it on my own. And um, when this came together, the beauty of this is that the album was done. And I was already in the process of manufacturing vinyl when it was brought to my attention that they were interested and that they wanted to put this out. So it was actually perfect in the sense that I made the record I was supposed to make regardless, because oftentimes you can't help but think differently. Oh, wait a minute. If I have a major label behind me, maybe I should kind of twist this and turn that and blah, blah, blah. So in this instance, there was no influence other than me recording what it was that I wanted to record, the way that I wanted it to sound, and so on. So there's a beauty to that. I think it was a perfect situation. So I'm really happy that it came together that way.
You're going to be touring the U.S. in support of the album starting in September through November. It's sort of an East Coast jaunt down into Texas. How much of the new material are you planning on playing?
It's East and West. We start in California, and we've got 4 shows in California, and we work our way across. So we're hitting the West Coast too. And it's a long one. It's about 7 weeks because the first performance is on September 13th in San Juan Capistrano, and then the next night we're in Hollywood at the Whiskey, and then from there we go up to Roseville. So we do already. We've been doing cheap shots on the European tour, and I'd like to obviously work in on the table because that's been played around, and people have heard it. And then from there, you got to see what happens. There's going to be a third single coming very soon, and it's an interesting thing when an artist makes a new record because on one hand, you want to play all the new stuff, and then on the other hand, you want to play stuff that people want to hear, and so it's kind of treading that line. But one of the great things about the set is that we do have a lot of improv, a lot of stuff where we do some long solos, and it's different every night. So I'm very much looking forward to getting out.
You just finished up a European tour. You did some headlining shows and you did some festivals. I mean, certainly contrasting audiences there. What do you think about the dynamic between the two types of shows?
Oh, well, I really I mean, obviously, you like your headline show, but I really enjoy those shorter sets, on the festivals, with the kind of a built-in audience. And we were very fortunate that in our time slots, the people that were there knew my music. So, there was an element of sing-along, which was great because oftentimes you can get out there and if you're there at the wrong time in front of the wrong people, it doesn't go so well. But we had really great responses. And so I really enjoyed the festival stuff. I love it. And then obviously we opened up for CZ Top, which was amazing. I've done that for them before in the past, and it's a great camp. And I'm a super fan of the group and what they do. And and then we opened for Extreme. My friend Nuno Betancourt and Gary and the other guys in the band were all friends. And so that was really a lot of fun. I think that was a really cool bill, for the guitar fans, to see Nuno and I on the same bill. And so it was great. It was a great tour. I had a lot of fun. I don't think there's any of that happening on the US tour. I think all these shows are my own.
Okay. Do you have a plan in mind once the US tour is finished up in November on what you're going to do? You're going to head back into the studio? You're going to tour in a different territory?
I think the talk is that I'm going to go back and do some dates in Europe next year now that the record is out, because with the previous European tour, the record wasn't out. And so that will happen. And if there's some festival opportunities again, I'll do those. And then the other thing without, I love the element of surprise, so I won't say too much, but Adrian and I have some new stuff we've been working on. So hopefully in the near future, we'll see something from Adrian and I. Adrian Smith, that is.
I think we all knew that.
Yeah.
I want to hit the time machine a little bit here. Back to I don't want to date you, but back to your first album.
Yeah.
self-titled Richie Kotzen, 1989.
Mm,
Almost 35 years ago to the day that we're talking here. Uh,
mm.
your first album, I believe, was on Shrapnel Records. You had like a little all-star band there: Stu Ham, Steve Smith,
Yeah.
Jason Becker producing, Mike Varney. Why don't you tell me a little bit about getting in the studio at that time to record that album?
Yeah, well, my second experience in a proper studio. The first experience I did an EP with my band back in Pennsylvania, and but that was my very early on learning how to be in the studio and that sort of thing. Very educational. I was very young. I was, 18. It was the year I came out of high school. I graduated high school and I went straight to San Francisco and recorded an album. Um, I feel very far removed from it all because it's 35 years ago, like you said. So I can't really, it's so much has happened in my life since then, that it doesn't seem like something that is right here, as far as to talk about it. But, I think the interesting thing about me is that I started making records, as a teenager, straight out of high school, which I think is not common. And so what happens if you look back, if you take my name and you look back, you can really see the evolution of, the very first thing I've done to what I've done now and everything that's happened in between. Whereas a lot of acts, might not make their first record until they're 25, or much later. So it's an interesting, like a diary, like an open diary, I think you'd say.
Certainly quite the evolution for you. I believe you started off as an instrumentalist, and as you went along, you started adding words and you started changing well, not really changing your sound, but developing your sound over the years. And
Yeah, it happened very quickly. I mean, I realized during the process of making that first record that instrumental music was not for me. And I remember that very clearly. Prior to that, I was in a band with, four great singers. And then well, I should say it was three great singers by the end, because it was a five-piece, then a four-piece. But and my singing was the weakest, so I'm not counting myself, but I sang too in the band. And, I realized very quickly that I was not cut out for the instrumental thing. And I wanted to do songs, with singing. And I was always writing songs with lyrics in my band previously on the EP we recorded. Three of the songs were my songs that I wrote the lyrics to, and then the other guys sang them because they sang better than I did at the time. And so I realized very quickly that I wanted to sing and do vocal songs, and that's why the second album I released I was singing on. But I wasn't actually 100% clear that I was going to be the lead singer. It was the record company that convinced me, and they said, "Well, listen, we're behind you if this is the kind of music you want to make, but we think you should be the lead singer." And that was Mike Varney, who was the president of the label, said, "I think that if you're going to do it, you sing your own songs." And so at that point, I started listening to guys that I liked, like David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes and um, Paul Rogers and Rod. This is relentless, this phone, and Rod Stewart. And those were the guys that I tried to emulate, with the rasp and that sort of thing. So, I very early on realized that I wanted to sing and play.
you mentioned the possibility of new music from Smith Kotzen. Is there a possibility of new music from the Winery Dogs? I know everybody involved in it's tied up with their other projects.
Yeah, I don't see that happening anytime soon, not because of anything other than the fact that everyone's on to other things. So in other words, we love each other and we enjoy the process. But Mike is back home with Dream Theater, which is very exciting, and I'm obviously doing what I'm doing. We're talking about it, and Billy's out with Mr. Big. So I think the idea was when we played our last show in Japan was, hey, let's keep the door open. And the band has really always been that way. It's always been a situation where because we're three people with three histories and pasts. And so when it lines up that all of us are available at the same time, we'll look at it and see what it is. But I will say that I think we made three really great records, and I'm glad that a hiatus happened when it did, meaning, to be able to put out a third album uh, on February 3rd, which is my birthday, in 2023. So, we exploited the value of the number three the best we could. And now we're on to other things. But, we left the door open, put it that way.
Are you working on any other projects that are coming down the pipeline?
No, I'm not a project. It's interesting how the outside perceives the reality of the person, but I'm not a project guy. I don't sit around and think, oh, who can I work with next? I pretty much am a man of my own making. I'll write a song, record it, it'll sit for a while, and really, I've been a solo artist my whole life. I've been putting out my own records since, as you discovered, 1989 with the first release. And that's what I am, and I'll always do it. Here and there, I've had some things that I've done that have been really great and really rewarding, creatively. And the latest thing is the collaboration with Adrian Smith and myself. So I think at this point, focus is on the new record, Nomad. And then down the line, there's going to be some things happening with Adrian and I that I'm excited about. So that's pretty much all there is for me, just those two things.
Well, those are all the questions I have for you today, Richie. The new album, Nomad, comes out on September 27th through BMG. Fantastic album. I'd recommend it to anyone. And you're going to be heading out on tour in September, and I hope to catch you here in Massachusetts. And thanks for taking the time to speak with KNAC.com.
Awesome. Thank you. Cheers.